Good morning from Siem Reap. I've been hearing a phrase a lot in the news lately. Bomb them back to the Stone Age. Politicians use it. Commentators use it. It gets thrown around casually, like it's just rhetoric, like it's pressure, like it's a negotiation tactic. But sitting here in Cambodia, that phrase hits different. Because Cambodia knows exactly what bomb back to the Stone Age actually means. Let me tell you what I've learned living here. The bombing that changed everything. Between 1965 and 1973, the United States dropped 2.7 million tons of explosives on Cambodia. Let that number sink in. 2.7 million tons. That's more than all the bombs dropped during World War II. Combined. All of them. Every bomb dropped by every side in the entire war. Cambodia got more. And here's the thing. Cambodia wasn't even officially at war with anyone. Cambodia was neutral. The US wanted to cut off North Vietnamese supply lines running through eastern Cambodia during the Vietnam War. So they bombed. Massively. Secretly at first. Entire villages destroyed. Hundreds of thousands killed. The exact number is still unknown because record-keeping wasn't possible during the bombing. And here's the part that everyone needs to understand about the phrase, bomb back to the Stone Age. Those bombs are still killing people, 50 years later. What that phrase actually delivers. I walk through villages around Siem Reap. I talk to farmers. I hear their stories. They're still finding unexploded ordnance. A farmer plows his field, hits a bomb from 1972, loses his leg, or his life. A child plays in the forest, picks up something that looks interesting. It explodes. The Cambodian Mine Action Center. They work every single day clearing land. 50 years after the bombing stopped. That's what bomb back to the Stone Age actually delivers. Not just immediate destruction. Generational consequences. Land that's unusable for decades. Agricultural development impossible. Infrastructure that can't be built because the ground is full of explosives. Economic growth delayed by generations. Families torn apart. Trauma that gets passed down to children who weren't even born during the war. And reconstruction that takes longer than the bombing did. Cambodia is still rebuilding, 50 years later. What Cambodia learned about superpowers. I've been talking to my Khmer friends, people over 50 who remember the bombing, who survived the Khmer Rouge, who lived through the Vietnamese invasion, all of it. And they've taught me something profound about how small countries survive when superpowers use them as chess pieces. You don't survive by winning. You don't survive by choosing sides. You don't survive by being loud or proud or defiant. You survive by enduring, by bending without breaking, by being too broken to fight over anymore. Cambodia survived French colonization, Japanese occupation during World War II, this massive US bombing campaign, the Khmer Rouge genocide, which was enabled by superpower politics, Vietnamese invasion, decades of Chinese influence, border conflicts with Thailand. Every major power in the region has used Cambodia, and Cambodia is still here, not because they defeated any of these powers, but because small countries learn a hard lesson. When elephants fight, grass gets trampled. So you stop being grass. You become water. You flow around the elephants. You survive. The pattern that keeps repeating. What strikes me, living here and watching the news, is how often I hear this phrase. Bomb them back to the Stone Age. It gets used about different countries, different conflicts, different eras. But the pattern is always the same. A superpower identifies a problem, issues ultimatums, threatens overwhelming force, uses that phrase, now back to the Stone Age, like it's just pressure. And then, if the bombing happens, the superpower eventually moves on, declares victory or declares failure, but either way, moves on to the next thing. While the bombed country spends generations recovering, finding unexploded bombs, treating trauma, rebuilding infrastructure, trying to develop economically on land that's still deadly. That's the pattern. And Cambodia knows it intimately. The human cost, nobody talks about. Here's what bothers me most about hearing that phrase used casually. The way it sanitizes what actually happens. Strategic strikes, maximum pressure campaigns, surgical operations, bombing back to the Stone Age. These phrases make it sound abstract, like it's just military operations, like it's chess moves. But what actually happens is families destroyed, children orphaned, entire villages flattened, infrastructure obliterated. And then, this is the part that gets forgotten, the long aftermath. The 50 years of clearing unexploded bombs, the 50 years of trauma being processed and passed down, the 50 years of delayed development. I see it here every day. Beautiful temples that survived the bombing, smiling people whose grandparents lived through hell, a growing economy that's still recovering from being bombed back to the Stone Age. Cambodia is functional now, growing, even optimistic, but it took 50 years to get here. And They're still finding bombs. Why small countries can't fight superpowers. My Khmer friends taught me something else. Small countries can't win against superpowers. Even if you win, you lose, because superpowers can always inflict more damage than you can endure. They have the weapons, they have the resources, they have the reach, and they can always call it something that sounds legitimate. Security concerns, strategic interests, regional stability, deterrence. But the small country is the one that ends up finding unexploded bombs 50 years later. Cambodia didn't defeat the United States. Cambodia survived by being too devastated to be worth continuing to bomb. That's not a victory anyone should want. But that's the reality small countries face when superpowers treat them as problems to be solved with overwhelming force. What that phrase really means. So when I hear "bomb them back to the Stone Age" in the news, and I've been hearing it lately, I don't hear an abstract threat. I hear 50 years of finding unexploded bombs, 50 years of farmers losing limbs, 50 years of delayed development, 50 years of generational trauma, 50 years of land that can't be used, 50 years of economic growth that can't happen because the ground is full of unexploded ordnance. That's what the phrase actually delivers. Not a quick military victory. Generational destruction. The lesson Cambodia taught me. I'm not Cambodian. I'm a British expat learning about this country. But Cambodia has taught me something about superpowers and small countries. Superpowers treat "bomb back to the Stone Age" as a phrase. Small countries live it as reality. Superpowers move on to the next conflict. Small countries spend generations recovering from being the last conflict. And the people who use that phrase casually, politicians, commentators, whoever, I wonder if any of them have walked through a Cambodian village. Have they talked to farmers who still find bombs from the 1970s? Have they met children whose grandparents' trauma shaped their entire childhood? Have they seen what "back to the Stone Age" actually looks like 50 years later? I doubt it. Because if they had, they might choose different words. They might think twice before using that phrase so casually. Why this matters now. I'm not going to name current conflicts. I'm not going to point to specific situations, because this video isn't about taking sides in today's politics. It's about understanding what words actually mean. When someone uses the phrase "bomb them back to the Stone Age," they're not talking about a quick operation. They're talking about generational consequences, whether they know it or not, whether they intend it or not. That's what the phrase delivers. Cambodia proves it. 50 years of consequences, still ongoing. A historical lesson with current relevance. The bombing of Cambodia happened 50 years ago. It's history, but the consequences are still present. The lessons are still relevant. And the phrase is still being used about different countries, different conflicts, but the pattern is the same. Superpower threatens, uses overwhelming force, calls it security or strategy or deterrence, and the smaller country pays the price for generations. Cambodia learned this the hardest way possible. Final thoughts. I'm sharing this not to take sides in any current conflict. I'm sharing this because I live in a country that knows what "bomb back to the Stone Age" actually means. And I think people should understand what that phrase delivers, not abstract military operations. 50 years of consequences, still finding bombs, still clearing land, still rebuilding, still processing trauma. That's the reality. That's what Cambodia teaches. Thank you for listening. If you found this perspective valuable, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. This is history. These are facts. These are lessons. What we do with those lessons is up to us.